when we were thinking about a new topic back in January, February, we were thinking that flooding is our most common natural hazard in New Zealand. Our country has a substantial flood event on average once every 8 months, so it's a significant issue. And then, of course, earlier this year, floods were in our public consciousness in a really major way after the terrible events and tragic loss of life as well in January and February as part of the Auckland anniversary floods, and then followed hot on the heels with Cyclone Gabrielle. So I went into this topic really excited to see whether sponge cities could offer us practical and effective solutions to make our cities and towns more resilient to these floods. And I guess we're all sort of used to hearing the doom and gloom about climate change, and I was really keen to investigate sponge cities because I think it can provide a vision of something positive and achievable that we can actually do to make ourselves more resilient, and also not just make cities more resilient, but also make them nicer places to live as well. So yeah, let's just start the slideshow. Yeah, so I won't spend a huge amount of time on this because I think a lot of people probably already know the basics of climate change and why we need a new approach. But in a nutshell, more intense rainfall's on the way. So at the moment, so over time with climate change, we're going to get some cities being drier overall in terms of annual average rainfall and some being wetter in terms of annual average rainfall. But all cities or all towns are likely to experience more spiky or more intense rainfall events. So, we're already seeing this happening, and we already know that climate change, that these events or more spiky rainfall events can be attributed to climate change with a high degree of probability, according to the International Panel on Climate Change. So it's already happening, and it's going to get worse, and we need to be preparing our cities to be able to handle these more spiky weather events without causing a loss of life and without having that major damage to houses and businesses and humans' livelihoods that we saw earlier on this year. We already have 1 in 7, something like that, New Zealanders living in flood-prone areas, which is absolutely huge. So that the issue is already urgent. We already need to be acting pretty quickly. Combined with that issue, we've got aging pipes and infrastructure. So we all will have heard about this in the news, but we're massively underinvesting in our grey infrastructure. And by grey infrastructure, I mean stuff made of concrete mostly, like pipes and drains. And we're only investing about a quarter of what we need to be investing each year just to keep it up to standard, let alone prepare for the future. So we're not ready in that sense at all for what's coming. We also have the fact that cities are becoming less green and we're losing trees. So the Parliamentary Commissioner for the Environment did some great research on this earlier on this year, a report called Are We Building Harder, Hotter Cities? The answer being yes, we are. We're losing a lot of green space in our cities over time. And one of the places we're losing the most green space is actually in private residences, which really surprised me. There's also a trend to build bigger houses on smaller patches of land, and then there's also a trend to be less keen, I guess, to have a vegetable garden, and for people then to be covering over what used to be gardens with driveways and other hard impermeable surfaces, or even building in their backyards, building new housing in their backyards. And we're also losing trees at a great rate because of our regulatory environment. They've been cut down at a huge rate. And if you're interested to see how your city is fared in this space, you could look at the Global Forest Watch website. They've got it's a really good tool that you can look to see how fast your city is losing trees. Maybe quite sobering. A further compounding issue is that cities are going to have to be able to house more people. So in the next 25 years, we'll need to be able to house about 1 million more people in our cities, mostly in our bigger cities. And we have to be able to do that in a way that's going to not make our cities less absorbent by covering over our green spaces. And then finally, we're not properly tracking risk at the moment. So we don't have, some cities are tracking risk well, some are not. We don't have sort of consistency. We don't have a national database that prioritizes cities according to their risk of flooding, which I think is a weakness. There is some work going on with MB and NIWA to rectify that, but that's a few years off. But that will be great when we're able to actually say, well, actually, this city is more at risk than this city and needs urgent prioritization of funding. We can't quite do that at the moment.